Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hey, Alex Simmons, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tell the Damn Story with Alex Simmons and Christopher Ryan in 2025, also known as Hell. All right, so.
Yes, welcome New Year, folks. Welcome New Year.
The new year, it's new adventures, ladies and
Yes, new
gents.
adventures. And I hope you enjoyed our previous episode where we talked about some fun things that inspired us in 2024. Here we are in 2025, and we're actually going to talk about how to approach the changing times. And it's not just domestic changing times, but global changing times. How writers are going to be able, at least how we feel, you might be exploring, how do we create in this changing time, looking at several challenges. And we're going to hit those one at a time. We're going to at least look at 5 of them and offer up some insights, some questions, and see where it takes us. Okay?
There's everybody is entitled to see the world how they see it, and that's how we get a wide variety of creativity. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to try and be for everybody here, even in 2025, even if I'm making jokes. There you go.
And by the way, the reason I am wearing this hat, which by the way, the logo is not
That's Juan, right?
It's not me. It's Juan Espinosa's
That's our guy.
And Comics. Yes.
Yes, Juan
But I'm
and
wearing
his
this
daughter.
Hat. Yeah,
both
I'm wearing
comic
this hat
book
not
creators.
So much to honor him, but because every time I do this, my hair disappears. So I figured, let me try and wear something that's a little darker on my head. I may not keep it on, but we're going to start out that way.
Let us say Happy New Year, Juan.
Yes, yes.
Happy New Year, for the
Juan.
hat.
Juan and family. Yes. Okay.
Juan and fams. Yeah.
So
all right.
Let's get started.
So let's you start.
Yes, I will. Okay. So we were in the green room because we do that every now and then. And Chris opened up a major can of worms because he's good at that and looked at, as you can tell from his background, looked at the social, political, global world that we're living in. And there are going to be some changes coming in 2025. Some may affect creatives in terms of how we communicate, what we can talk about, when we can talk about it, all of that stuff. Some may give us even much more material, pro or con. Some of it may be, to talk Wayback Machine for a split second, much like the 30s when people were going through the Depression and a hell of a time. Some of the stuff that may come out will be totally to distract us and entertain us, make us laugh or something, because, hey, we will probably need it, like fire extinguishers from where he is. So what we did was we came up with 5, I'm trying to pick up the page, 5 specific questions or categories that we wanted to explore today, just to poke at them, just to look at them under the microscope and see how this might affect us as creatives, as writers in particular, and what answers we may have, or are they just the big questions we need to consider? So let me start with Chris.
Yes, sir.
One of yours was...
I'm asking Glorious to allow Isabella to leave. She's at the door. So
Isabella, I see. Isabella is one of your staff members?
Yes, she is.
Your 4-legged staff members?
She's allegedly in charge of PR.
Ah, okay. Yes.
As you can see.
Yeah. So the question, how do you express your heart hurt? First off, what did you mean by heart hurt? And then how do you express that? How do you think we're going to be able to express that in 2025?
Depending on where you find yourself situated, politically, religiously, economically, things going on in our world today can outrage, can depress, can hurt. There are many executives these days quite nervous and looking over their shoulder because of Luigi Mangione having shot Brian Thomas. And there's one side, which is, oh my God, how could this happen to us? And then there's the other side saying, yes, we acknowledge that a murder was committed, that a person was killed, but he's a person. To quote Josh Johnson, yeah, So's my cousin. So was this person's grandmother. And you denied health services and killed them. So there's a very wide and deeply felt hurt on both sides of that situation
Mm.
for a long time now. Some may do politically, some may do religiously, economically, on and on. What do you do with that? Is there a creative outlet for that? How do we approach that? The difference between being creative and going on a rant. There is a place for rants, whether it's Substack these days or X, although people who are on the wrong side of the owner of X will get X'd out of X if they go on a rant that he doesn't like. But most of us who gather for this show on both sides of the microphone, we're looking for a more artistic release. And that's hopefully what we're going to talk about today. I think one of the things we have to do is identify the hurt. What's bothering you? What do you find yourself thinking about when you should be sleeping or waking yourself up over? Or some of us are doom scrolling. Well, what are
Mm.
we going to do with this? None of this to get obsessed and lost in all that is not creative and it's not healthy. So, what do we do with that?
Okay.
I think
Okay.
that's where metaphor and simile can come in. Project that's going to be published in 2025 that has what I think is the villain of this era, and that is privilege. I think we are in the stirrings of a class war that ebbs and flows. It has been something that has gone on throughout our history, but I think it's surging again, and it might be a source of creativity or a source of inspiration for your creativity.
Okay. All right.
What to do with it is a different question. George Orwell wrote 1980 Christmas Carol, we spoke about last episode, but a lot of the Scrooge backstory came from previous things that people wouldn't publish for Dickens that had a lot to do with how we treat each other.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of those works could be denied their creativity. The Wizard of Oz, Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the
Alice in
Rings,
Wonderland.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yes, all of these are creative outlets from nuggets of discontent or heart hurt, as we said.
Or an
So,
observation of the ways society or a particular aspect of society is flexing its muscles or how we're living or how
yes,
one
to you.
sees that. Yeah.
True.
Okay.
The first thing I'm suggesting and we are suggesting is if your heart hurts, take some time and figure out what's bothering you. Identify it, and then you could start seeing what possibilities there might be
You can
to
express it. Yeah.
express it
Absolutely.
creatively.
Right. Okay. How to portray, well, this actually ties into a little bit to the first one. How to portray a story about a particular celebrity or political figure, someone in the limelight, without getting sued. You know, if you're not agreeing with their stance or their position or their statement, and you want to express yourself, how do you do that in a way that doesn't wind you up in bankruptcy court or behind bars?
There's a thing on the indicia page, the copyright page of every novel that says this is a work of fiction. Any similar
Similarity?
resemblance to people living, dead, or undead, merely coincidence. Same thing with actions, fact, anything. It should cover that. However, we are in an age of our incoming president sues everybody. He's been suing newspapers, big and small. So it's a more litigious time. But there's ways of going about that as well.
I would add that the easiest way is to disguise that sort of thing.
Yes, I was
If
working my
you
way towards that.
absolutely feel that you absolutely have to poke the bear,
Right.
then use a very long distance stick. Put another identity, a face, figure, and whatever in there. Put in another world, put in another time, whatever it is
Put
that
it
you
in another
do.
gender or put it in
Right,
another.
whatever it is, anyone reading into it will read into it properly. And anyone else, it's going to be, yeah, I know that you feel that this is a representation of how you act, and I'm saying negative things about it, but you're not a koala bear. You're a human being. And my story
Giorgio,
about
yeah.
this koala bear, right?
Well,
So,
we mentioned Orwell's 1984, which was actually a commentary on some things that were going on in Europe, where there was talk of embracing socialism or totalitarianism, and Orwell thought, "Oh God, this is going to be terrible." So he wound up writing Animal Farm in 1984 to try and protest or warn people about, yeah, this is what it's going to look like. And any of the characters in there that were political were well disguised. So they
mhm,
stood on their own as characters and didn't necessarily have direct correlation. Same thing with the Simple Rebellion. The two leads in there are based on famous comedians, but they are not those comedians. They're a mix of a few. And the same thing with, I went out of my way to name the last couple of presidents and three or four more fictitious presidents so that the statement was overt that this was not anybody current, but we were exploring what happens if we let the divides in America to continue to fester. So that's this
and
that I realized I wasn't writing, I'm mad about what this guy did on Thursday. I'm writing about the whole of our country. I'm writing about. So you have to reflect a little bit and then you apply it using all your gifts as a writer
mhm,
to fictionalize away from the legal arena.
yeah. And again, if you feel compelled to actually go up and slap the bear with your bare hands, just again be prepared for the ramifications thereof. So be strategic, okay? I was saying that, again, this is number three here. I was saying that, and I just reiterated it a little while ago, that sometimes you can tell your story, you can make your statement, or you can explore the themes of the things that are bothering you or that you think are reflecting a negative path that we're on. That you can explore these things by taking the theme or taking the topic or the character and representing the story through something out of the past or something in the present or something futuristic. I know that we talked about this, that in literature and in film over the past 40 years, we've seen waves of different types of quote unquote fictional characters becoming very popular. There was a period of where everything was vampires. There was a lot of vampiric stories about Dracula or the Vampire Diaries or anything that dealt with the seductive aspect of vampirism, the and seductive as in again sexual, but also seductive as in the power. Once I become this creature, this type of creature, I can do this and I can do that. I can control people. So there's a lot of vampire stories and the innocence being taken from people once they are bitten and brought into that type of cult, if you will.
Yeah. And
And then
that
there
usually
was
reflects a time in society when people feel they're being preyed upon.
and then
Yeah.
you had the zombie period, which is The Walking Dead and a number of other stories
Different
along those
metaphor.
lines. Which again, once you're bitten by or once this you're infected by this thing, you are no longer your own person anymore. You are the walking dead. You are, and this zombies, as in these stories, were dead or undead, but it also could be representational of people walking through life, not taking control of their lives, being somebody else's puppet, walking or marching to the tune of somebody else's song, and having no real control of your own life or your own will, your own
Right.
direction.
And the sheer number of zombies that you can have in a story
Yeah,
is a great metaphor for society feeling overwhelmed
right,
and out of control and that kind of thing. The monsters can be a reflection on what
right.
you're trying to say.
And then you go with the doom and gloom prophecy era, which is every other film was an apocalyptic doom thing in the future. Everything that, from nuclear war to whatever the heck it was. So you go from Mad Max to Book of Eli. It's just everything that except for Star Trek, the future did not look too good. And it's a wasteland. So it's not just society breaks down, but the earth itself breaks down. And that doesn't give you a lot to get up and feel good about in the morning. Here comes the sun. Actually, it's going to burn the flesh off your body, go back into the cave. So we had these different waves of what are we trying to say? What are these writers trying to say? What are they saying about the past, the present, or the future of
Yeah.
humankind? And you can do that with your stories. You can look at themes that you want to explore right now and say, did something in the past foretell this? Or is it a better representation of what we're dealing with now? And can I use that? Or do I want to keep it present day? Or do I
Yeah.
want to say, if we, as in with a simple rebellion, if we stay on the path that we're on now, this is what our future could become, or this
Right.
is what it will become. So we can look
Um,
at using any of those particular settings, I think, as you referred to it.
yeah, or world building. And it's really interesting that in all of those different ones, you still have these two story structures that can fit in any of them. The hero's journey, where whatever the odds, the person finds the strength within to overcome those odds and whatever it is that the hero has to do. But then there's the stranger comes to town, which is things are whatever the normal is, whether it's the normal or the new normal or
The abnormal. Yeah.
a post-apocalyptic normal
Yeah.
or Star Wars, any of those. When the stranger shows up, now Star Wars, I know there's a few of you going to be freaking out saying that is a classic hero's journey. It is, but it also has an element of the stranger comes to town. Luke's story is definitely a hero's journey. When the person shows up and says, Obi-Wan, I need you. Or the two droids show up. They are definitely strangers. A stranger comes to town. Both structures are really useful and it's worth
Where
a
would you put
Google.
Han Solo in that?
Yeah, Han Solo's definitely, but there are a ton of stranger comes to town stories.
It's a town that invites a lot of strangers. Yes.
When something new is introduced to the norm that shakes up the norm, whether it's Footloose or the Magnificent Seven to indulge the Wayback Machine. When someone shows up and a lot of the Clint Eastwood, the man with no name and that kind of stuff, but there's modern uh iterations of that as well. But they can be meshed with these other genre, these other settings, these other world building situations that we talked about. There are a lot of tools in your toolbox already that you can use to express whatever is inside that you need, or whatever reaction to society that you need to express. I think I use express twice in that sentence. Hey, 2025 off to a new great start.
Yes, you expressed yourself quite well there. Here's a big one here. How do you turn fear, frustration, or rebellion into art?
I think with three brushes and a lot of paint. No,
And not
was
all would be red and orange. Yeah,
that was my Paul Lind, but I didn't do the double entendre.
but
Again, for creatives, and you all who are watching, I'm sure that there's that element in there to some degree. Something bothers you, and it gets in there like a little grit of dirt in a oyster, right, or a clam, and it starts irritating. It won't go away, and then you go, "What if?" Or this character. Oh, and those are the seeds that you can use to express this hurt, this frustration. Let it develop. Keep asking the questions. Who is this person I'm seeing? Who's Desdemona de la Cruz or whatever the character's name might be? What do I know about her? And then slowly the parts start coming together and then take your swing. You know what I'm going to say?
let it
Just
suck.
Write it, let it suck, see where
Yeah,
it goes,
yeah,
and we'll talk about what happens afterwards in a little while.
right. So I'm looking at fear, frustration, and rebellion. And one could say that we have more of it now to deal with than we ever did in the past and all that. And yeah, you could say that. But I think if you look at A Tale of Two Cities, if you look at Hunchback of Notre Dame, you can find, even in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where you had a woman writing this novel in an era when women weren't expected to write that kind of material, let alone to write something about the abomination of God and life by a human, by a man deciding he's going to create life. That's an abomination, right? But these are the stories she had in her head. And whatever prompted her to write it at a time when women should be in the kitchen, kind of thing, that's a form of rebellion.
Hmm?
When you look at The Hunchback of Notre Dame, when you look at The Tale of Two Cities, you could say they're classics, yes, but what was going through the author's minds when they wrote it? Why did they choose those subjects? What were they trying to say? You can read it as purely entertaining literature, or you can go, oh, was this a comment on the rule of the people with money? Was this a an observation about class discrimination? What was this about? What was Oliver? What was that? What were these stories trying to say? So I think that ultimately there's always been, not for every writer, but there's always been a certain portion of writers who were experiencing frustration or experiencing fear or experiencing a negative, rebellious attitude towards the establishment or an established injustice at that time that found way to make a comment about that through their work, whether it was overtly or covert. And I think
Yeah.
once again, you mentioned Alice in Wonderland. That's considered a children's story, but it was also a covert observation about the power struggles that were going on at that time. And
Yeah.
I think many of the stories that are done now, even some of the television shows, present day television shows, what are they about? Why have superhero movies at this point in space and time become so popular? Because quite often, with the exception of maybe the Avengers as a group, but with Spider-Man, with Daredevil, with Iron Man, these are always individuals going up against a greater threat. And it always seems to come back to what I would call the Robin Hood complex or the Lone Ranger complex, which is, can one person, one
Make a
individual,
difference.
maybe one individual and a companion or partner, can they make a difference? And can you make a stand? And do you make a stand against a bigger, greater, overpowering,
Yeah.
outnumbering evil? Yeah.
And if I could add to you, there's two things I want to add. One is going to be more controversial, but first part is that the hero doesn't always win.
Mm,
Not in the classic sense like you are defeated, right? Think of Braveheart, right? Mel Gibson's character, his final fate is not to unseat the evil power, but to inspire an entire country. The story. The second thing I wanted to say was that I think art comes from broken people. I think we as creatives are creative because we're all broken in some way. And the lucky few of us find a vehicle to express and to heal that by contributing, whether it's a story or a song or a stand-up comedy routine or a great performance. We, all of us, human beings, are works in progress. And I suspect, having followed news since I was 11 or 12 and reading about David Berkowitz, son of Sam, and while I was delivering newspapers,
wow.
there's always some kind of thing that is alarming. And all sides of our community can find things to be alarmed about these days. I am sure there is a keyboard on fire somewhere right now in New Jersey because someone looked up and saw those drones and their great story was born. And it doesn't matter if those drones were just nerds having fun and not alien invasions. Whatever it inspired you to do, and whatever is important enough for you to spend all that times, to quote Richard Price, who said to me, listen, writing's not a party. It's mostly ass in chair. And if something inspires you enough to spend that time, that's good enough. And feel that and be proud that you have the ability or the desire or the fire in you, hey, to want to pursue that. Some of you are jumping up and down and say, talk about the politics. We don't have to. We all know one way or the other, whether, oh my God, the Democrats are just, I can't deal with them, or the Republicans are going to do this to the country, or whatever you want to say. Both sides see the other side as villains. And by the way, that's part of the long con, ladies and gentlemen. We're not the enemy to each other. Okay. There's also hints of a class war that's going on. I'm sure that's going to inspire a couple of stories. It doesn't matter what you're writing about. It doesn't matter the origins of it. What matters is you listen to your heart and you follow your instincts as an artist and do the work to make it as best as you can. Get some other people to read it, listen open with an open mind to their feedback, maybe go back and polish some more and contribute, because what you're writing might save the life of someone else out there. That's what art does. And it's important, maybe now more than ever. So go ahead, feel that hurt in your heart and figure out how to take it from here to whatever the book is, whatever the song is, whatever the monologue is, the stand-up routine, the opera, whatever. But the world needs your art.
Let me also add to that the not necessarily the eternal optimist, but the old optimist. Um,
I'm a cynical optimist.
yeah, well, to me, to not have blinders on, one has to look at the precipice that's out there. One has to look at the sharp turns in the road if you're driving too fast. One has to acknowledge the dangers and the things that you might want to avoid. But the other thing that I think we don't have enough of, and I'm hoping that again, some of you listening will pursue with your creativity, is the sharing of hope. Because once we stop feeling that there's an opportunity or a possibility to make a difference, to make a change, to affect one person, let alone 100 people, once we start giving up on that, then it is so much more of a lost cause, and whether you feel it right now 100% or not, the world has gone through crap before. We've gone through hard times before. We've gone through scary times before. There are no promises here. There's no guarantees. But with some hope, with hope and a vision and a plan, we can affect the next day. We can affect things. Certainly, people like Chris and I, we've known each other for over 30 some odd years. We have known other people in our lives from different backgrounds, different belief systems, different lifestyles, different religions, different territories, different countries. We have moved through the world intersecting with these folks in pros and cons situations. And nothing has made either one of us feel that it's all over, that the only people worth spending time with are people like myself. What it's taught us is that, yeah, there are going to be some people you don't get along with. There are going to be a bunch of people you do get along with. And there's some people you can live next to and never socialize with. It doesn't matter. As long as we can take care of ourselves, our families, our loved ones, and move through the world earning our way, there's no reason to nuke anybody else. If we're going to have children, then we got to promise the kids a chance at making a difference in the world. If we're going to have children and say, no, it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket, then why did we bring them into the world? What was the point? More fuel for the cannon? So to me, one of the things that we should be fighting for, as hard as anything else, is hope and a positive direction. And I know that can mean different things to different people. But ultimately, folks, ultimately, we all have to live on this planet. Until you can move to Mars, Venus, Jupiter, wherever the hell it is you're going to go, another dimension, until magic becomes possible and you can live go through the wardrobe into another realm like Narnia. Until those things are realities, we all have to exist on this planet. And this planet needs us and we need it. And somehow, in your work, as you explore the fears, frustrations, and the rebellion, and anything else that you want to write about, try not to lose that spark of hope that you can do better, that you can make something better, that you can affect the world in some way and make it a little
Hmm.
bit easier for those who are with us now, but certainly for those who are coming up behind us.
And I'll be a little more cynical about that. But it's all the message is love. Okay. In the late 30s and 40s, there was, I'm not going to curse, but there was
Thank
Hitler.
you.
There was Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And he was what we know him to be. And there was also Charlie Chaplin.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not in a position to assassinate Hitler or to defeat him in war. Charlie Chaplin was a gifted comedian. And he did as much or more to help bring down that monster with The Great Dictator,
The
an
film,
amazing
yes.
film that used comedy to point at that devil and say, look, he's just a jerk. He's just a jerk. You don't have to fear him. We can unite and go in a different direction. We survived that partially through the power of Charlie Chaplin's creativity and everybody who worked with him. There is no reason to lose hope. What we have to protect is our ability to love. Charlie didn't love Hitler. He loved comedy and he loved art. And he used what he loved to contribute to the betterment of mankind. Not everybody out there is interested in the betterment of mankind. But you and me, all us creatives who are here, we're not looking to fill up an Uzi. We're looking to fill up a page or a canvas, some sheet music, and go do that. Embrace that art. Share that love. That's the best way you can move through life.
Facing fear, frustration, and rebellion, and tell your damn story.
Amen.
And on that note, folks, welcome to 2025.
It's gonna be a
Sharpen your
party.
Yes, sharpen your pencil, clean the screen on your tablet or your laptop, and get to work. Chris,
Peace.
pleasure.
To all of
Take
you.
care. And
My
we'll
love.
see you next week. Oh, Chris, what should they do?
If you have time before you create your masterpiece, hit subscribe and so that we can continue doing what we do, whether I have a full head or no.
And there it goes.
Haircut, instant haircut. Peace,
I know I'll wear
everybody.
this cap now. Maybe I'll get a skull cap for next week. But anyway, take care, everybody. Bye-bye, Chris.
Peace.